Hi, everybody. Mrs. Norris here. So, we're continuing our discussion of the DBQ. How did the Constitution guard against tyranny? And before we continue, I'd like to set us up so that we can work together to complete document B. So you're probably watching this tutorial either through Canvas or with this video link here. So I'm going to pretend as if you are on this video link here within the document, and I'm going to set myself up in that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the tutorial link, and I'm going to open that up. It will start playing automatically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to half my screen here and then move the tutorial over to the side. Nope. It's a very delicate game. So now I will be able to watch this tutorial while also completing the tasks at the same time. So if you could please pause this video and get yourself set up, and then we'll get started. You'll probably have to fast forward this video to wherever we're at right at this moment. So if you could go ahead and pause your video and do that for me now, and then we'll join back together and continue. All right, so at this point, you're all set up. Let's go back to slide number 1. Just a reminder of what we're doing here. This is the DBQ. So we are looking at documents that are going to help us provide evidence when we answer the question, how did the Constitution guard against tyranny? So if you could at this moment read the overview to yourself, or if you would like, in the top right-hand corner is an audio. You can click on that audio button and use it to help you follow along while I read it to you. Either way, whether you choose to read it to yourself or listen to me, if you could pause the video and review before we move on, and then we'll join back together in a moment. All right, so at this point, you've reminded yourself of what this whole task is about by reading or listening to the overview, and we're ready to move on. As you can see, we're looking at document B today, which is a discussion on the separation of powers. All right, so each branch of the government, and as we know from previous discussion, there are 3 branches. Each branch has its own jobs to do. And we'll talk later in document C about the fact that each branch is meant to check on the other branches to make sure that there is a balance of power. So this is the first half of our discussion on separation of powers and checks and balances. Okay, so let's move on to slide number 3. Slide 2 is just the tutorial. We don't need to look at that. And we're on slide number 3. So we have a couple of pieces here. Let me walk you through them before we get started. So on the left-hand side, we have our highlighting boxes and then our identifying boxes for the question numbers. So please remember that part of your task is annotating the text. And so in annotating the text, what you are doing is you are moving the highlighting boxes over to where you're finding the answers to the questions, but you are also tasked with moving the question number box next to wherever you found that highlighted answer. So for example, what is the main idea of Madison's quote? That's number 1. If this were the answer, which it is not, I would click and drag the number 1 next to that highlighted section. That helps me answer it. What that does for me as your teacher is it shows me where you found the answer, that you know how to identify evidence within the text to support your answers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move these back. Underneath our annotating tools, we see a short little video. So this little video is to provide background information for you about the separation of powers. We'll get to that in just a moment. We have our reading section in the middle here, and then on the right-hand side is the space where you will write your answers to the questions. So before we get started, what I'd like for you to do is pause the video, this tutorial video, and watch this separation of powers video to help you to better understand what the 3 articles are talking about and what separation of powers means. So please pause this tutorial and watch this video for me now. All right, so after watching this video, you should have a better understanding of what each branch of the government is, what their job is, and who is in charge of each branch, and how they are separating powers between the three of them. So now we have our section in the middle where we are going to be reading and then answering our questions. So if you need some help with reading, if the text is too small, again, remember to use your preset zoom percentages. So I'm going to move up to 100%. It's about perfect size here. And I can probably move this open just a little bit. Now, as always, you can either read this to yourself, or in the top right-hand corner is, again, one of those audio buttons. You can have me read it to you. Either way, what I would like you to do now is pause this tutorial and please read to yourself or listen and follow along to document B. Okay, so let's continue. One of the words that I noticed many of us might have trouble with is this word vested. Okay, so if I use my context clues, it says all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress. So vested means that they are being given to that group of people. So the powers of legislation, of writing laws, is given to Congress. The executive power shall be vested in a president. So that power is given to the president of the United States. So vested is another way of saying given. It's given to them. Okay. So let's look down at our questions here. And if there are any other words that you don't understand or you need help with, use your tools dictionary and you can look up those words as well. Okay. So I did document A with you from beginning to end. With document B, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing the majority of the work yourself. All I really want to do is remind you how to annotate your text when you're finding your answers. And then please make sure that you are rewriting your answers in the box over here. They don't have to be complete sentences. Okay. Now, part of the reason why we annotate is because later when we write our DBQ, then you're going to be able to put what you answered here in your own words along with your text evidence here within the text. So it's much easier to be able to use your own words if you've identified where you found your support in the text itself. So by highlighting and then writing the question number next to it, or clicking and dragging the question number next to it, then you have a better way later to find your answer when you're looking for supporting evidence. Okay. So what is the main idea of the Madison quote? And I'm going to go back to a little bit smaller here, back to fit. And the main idea of the Madison quote, if we look up at the top here, would probably be this last sentence, right? The fact that accumulating, well, the combination of the first sentence and the last sentence, the accumulating of all powers in the same hands is the definition of tyranny. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here. Okay, the accumulation of all powers. And I'm going to copy and paste that same size box over to here. Okay, and then copy and paste again down to here. Oh. Okay. Now, all three of these sections of the text help me answer number one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my number one and I'm going to click and drag it to here. Okay. And then to make sure that I understand that all three of these go together, I'm going to copy and paste the number one. next to all three sections, right? So that I know that all three of these are going to be what helps me to answer number one. Okay. So now I've annotated the text. I've found my best answer, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them together into a sentence, not complete. It doesn't have to like restate the question or anything right here. It can be in my own words. But even if it's in your own words, when I, as your teacher, look and I see where you have found the answer in the text, which is shown by annotating, then I know that you can connect those two together and you'll be able to use that information in your final DBQ paragraph or essay, whichever we decide to do. Okay, so I'm going to leave the rest of this to you. Again, I walked through the first one with you from beginning to end. If there are any words or phrases that you don't understand, you have your tools and dictionary tool to help you with those words. If you don't understand, for example, what accumulation means, then by all means, look that up. That will help you. Okay. So once you are done, you're going to go back to Canvas and you are going to submit your work on Canvas. And then once I grade it, I'll either give it back to you with feedback on how to help you and better improve your answers, or I will give you a grade that will allow you to move on to documents C and D.